Welcome back to TechCouture Podcast. I'm your host, Kabir Shah, and today we have a really special guest. Today I'm speaking with Emma Pratt. Emma is one of the co-founders of Girl Math Capital. Girl Math Capital is an alternative investment community that's focused on providing education and access to deal flow. So the first pillar is all around education to alternative investing. Think of crypto, real estate, and angel investing. And the second pillar is all around providing access specifically to this community of women to deal flow. Since launching in January 2025, Girl Math Capital has deployed over $750,000 across a variety of deals, a lot of fun ones actually, and you'll hear all about it from Emma. They've also grown their community to over 400 women across the world, and now having gone full-time into Girl Math Capital this fall, Emma is ready for the next stage of Girl Math Capital. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast, Emma. This is a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. First, can you just start by telling our audience members, what is this unique connection that we have? Why are you on this podcast today?
We were actually connected through the founders of a portfolio company that I invested in, I Love Monday. So really grateful that they thought of me for the podcast and just really excited to be here.
Absolutely. Shout out to Janelle and Gabriella. They're doing great work. So everyone look up I Love Monday and then obviously look up Girl Math Capital. Emma, start by telling us a little bit about yourself, your background, and then what is Girl Math Capital?
Yeah. So I grew up outside of Boston, Massachusetts, attended Vanderbilt for undergrad, where I met both of my co-founders, Serena Ainsley and Porter Ghia. I started my career in investment banking at Bank of America in New York City. Was quickly drawn to my consumer and technology deals. So I decided to join the operating side and went to Uber. I was first on the strategic finance team and then went on to the M&A team. And it was during that time that I started exploring angel investing. I was excited about the idea of putting my money into causes in early stage companies that I was passionate about. But honestly, at that time, I felt like I didn't really have anyone to look up to in the space, and I felt like I wasn't really in the right rooms to receive deal flow. That was kind of the idea that my two co-founders and I kept coming back to, was that the private markets were hard to access, and especially so for women. So we really started Girl Math as the community that we wanted to have for ourselves. We wanted to give women a place to learn about alternative investing, access deal flow, and ultimately invest alongside one another. I took the leap, as you said, to start working on Girl Math full-time in August. And it's been really rewarding, but I also have a feeling this is just the beginning.
Just the start. So why now then? Why launch Girl Math Capital when you did? And when you did first, launch it, did you think of it just as an education platform? Or was it always meant to be something greater in terms of like actually bringing deal flow and actually investing this money somewhere?
That's a great question. We wanted to start with the education side because we thought kind of one of the biggest barriers of getting more women into investing is that we, I think as a gender, like to be very informed about where we're putting our money and why. So we thought that education was kind of the first best angle to tackle this problem from. But then the next best step would be actually putting that knowledge to work. So why now? It's actually interesting. We, like I said, started Girl Math as a community that we wanted for ourselves. But in hindsight, the problem was so much bigger than that. You might be familiar with the Great Wealth Transfer and the fact that in 2020, women controlled about 11 trillion of US household financial assets. And by 2030, that's going to be 34 trillion. So we're seeing women come into this whole new kind of era of wealth. But at the same time, we're still seeing that men invest in alternative assets at 2 times the rate that women do. And the reason why this discrepancy is important is because alternative assets are where a lot of the kind of greatest wealth building opportunities get done. So it's important to have more women who are a part of that. And on a global scale, a lot of startups kind of decide what startups you're funding decides what companies get started and what causes ultimately end up getting solved. So it's important on an individual level, but then also on a global scale to have more women in alts.
When you first were coming up with this idea and reaching out to folks, was there an inherent demand for this, did you find? Or was it something that maybe it took a little while for people to respond to what you were building?
Yeah. So in 2024 was when we started it was a group of our 10 close friends from Vanderbilt. And again, at that time, we weren't really building for scale originally. We ended up hosting our first in-person event in August of 2024, and we had started getting the word out about Girl Math Capital, but we ended up having a wait list for that event of over 500 women.
Okay, inherent demand.
Inherent demand. That was our moment where we stood back and we said, okay, the problem is so much bigger than just us. And there are women who are really hungry to learn about these spaces and get into these spaces. So that was the moment where we said, all right, come January 2025, we are taking this public and launching our first true cohort of Girl Math.
That's amazing. Where did this idea of cohorts come from? Because for our listeners, and you can definitely explain this, but there are two different ways to get involved with Girl Math Capital. So talk about the idea of the cohort first, and then obviously the community aspect of it.
Yeah. So our cohort is a 4-month virtual boot camp that most of our new members go through when they start at Girl Math. And our model is bringing in women who work full-time in angel investing, venture capital, real estate, and crypto to teach our members how to start thinking about these asset classes and making smart decisions. Alongside that is when we're sharing deal flow, hosting events in person, hosting virtual events too, and activating our community virtually and in person. Our other membership tier, as you mentioned, is our community member. And those are for women who might already work in venture capital or have been angel investing for the last 3-5 years. And they want the deal flow, but not necessarily the education component. For our cohort members, the idea is the education is the on-ramp, and then you stay for the deal flow, the events, the community. And for our community members, the idea is they come in with that knowledge and are really trying to capitalize on the other aspects of Girl Math.
Why? I get the importance of the angel investing piece, obviously, but where did this idea of involving crypto and then real estate into this education around alternative investments come from?
Yeah, when we were first excited about not only startups, but also the idea of funding properties together and flipping those, or starting to explore the crypto markets. The reason why we ended up settling on those three to start with is because they're the most approachable and accessible on an individual basis. So these three asset classes tend to have lower minimums for check sizes than something like investing in a private equity fund or a venture capital fund. Our goal long-term would be to be able to offer opportunities and educations across all alternative asset classes, but we really focus on those three because of their combined accessibility.
If you could maybe give us a bit of a breakdown of right now, when you think of the founders you bring in or sort of the education aspect of it, what is sort of the breakdown across all three of them? Are you spending, a majority of the time giving education and access to opportunities on angel investing, or is it fairly even within angel real estate, etc.?
Yeah, that's actually a great distinction because our education focuses most on angel investing, but is pretty balanced with a segment on real estate and then on crypto. On the deal flow side, I would say our members pretty heavily focus on startup investments.
Yeah.
We do try to layer in real estate opportunities and emerging funds and even film and Broadway productions when we can. But in terms of what we see on our deal flow side most frequently, it would be early stage startups.
I simply saved this question for the end, but I think it's pretty apt as listeners are tuning in here. How can they get involved? Like, how do they get involved with the Girl Math community, and especially on the cohort side?
Yes. So we are in the middle of our third cohort right now, and we're kicking off our fourth cohort in August.
That's exciting.
So we can't wait. We'll be opening up applications in June. So right now there's an interest form on our website that potential members can fill out.
And what's the website?
It's girlmath.capital.
Okay.
And in the meantime, would love to have any listeners to our events and our virtual sessions in the meantime until our August cohort kicks off. Yep. Anyone who already works in venture or real estate or crypto is welcome to apply to our community membership as well.
And it's funny, as I was prepping for this call, I actually found that we had a couple of different people who we know in common who had actually been involved with Girl Math Capital. I know you'd previously been on, I think it was a panel with Remedy Product Studio before.
Yes.
I'm friends with one of the investors there. And then you had I think it was an event with Goodword and Alex Chung as well. So it's honestly funny how maybe it's just New York, but this community seems very small in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it really does. That's one of the reasons that I love New York is the concentration of people and the amount of people that you get to meet too. So those are two partners that I feel really lucky that we've been able to work with.
That's awesome. Moving on to the deal side of this, the money aspect. Can you start by just sort of laying the groundwork of the state of women-led businesses and the funding that they get, and just what you've learned about women investors, especially as this is a community that you've really served so far?
Yeah, 100%. So a statistic that you might be familiar with is the fact that only 2% of venture capital funding goes to female-founded teams. And unfortunately, that has not changed much in the past decade. But I think what's not focused on as much is in order to change that, we need to be changing who's writing checks. So the whole goal of Girl Math is to give women the confidence to be able to choose the startups and opportunities that they want to fund, because that ends up changing who gets access to funding and then what problems get solved.
So let's say I'm starting this new cohort. I don't know anything about this whole landscape. What are you teaching me about creating my own, let's call it, thesis around investing? What can I expect to learn around knowing even what should I be focusing on, or how do I match my dollars to my values, let's say?
Yeah. One of our first sessions is on your portfolio as a whole. So how much of your portfolio should be focused on alternative investments. And that one's actually led by Elvest, who's one of our partners that focuses on traditional investing. But our session after that is actually led by Cheryl Kelland, who's the founder of Play Money, which is a platform for syndicates. And she goes deeper into what portfolio construction should look like. And it's interesting. The important part is to diversify across startups, but you actually don't need to be investing in necessarily what you have expertise in. It's just important that you are investing in a range of companies and, like you said, deciding what's important to you and writing checks based on that. So there are definitely some criteria that we look for and that we try to teach our members on what rubric they should use to think about whether they want to invest in a company. But again, one of the most important bottom lines is to invest in a founder and a mission that you feel aligned with.
So as you're bringing deals in, and you're bringing deals across, like you said, real estate, crypto, angel investing, early stage investing in general, what is sort of the filter, if you have any, that you look through before pushing deals towards your broader community?
Yeah. From my perspective, there are kind of four main categories. The first would be the founder, and that I would say is most important by far, because the company could change, but the founder is going to stay the same. Within the founder, we look for someone who's really passionate about that area and has deep industry expertise, but also someone who will attract good talent to end up coming on to join them. I also look for strong product market fit. So early signs that this founder knows that what they're building is needed and it's different from all of the solutions that exist right now. Third, I would say, is early traction. Even if the company is pre-launch, we look for some sort of positive signals, such as a wait list or even number of followers on Instagram or TikTok.
Yeah.
And then lastly, I would say is probably large and growing market. We want a large amount of people that can be served by this product, but then beyond that, some sort of trend or timing aspect that makes now the time to invest in this company.
No, I mean, especially during the earliest of stages, due diligence can be really hard because really you're going off of what you said, who the founders are, how well do they know this market, had they been building this before, and the traction of it.
Mm-hmm.
Has there been sort of a learning on your own part as you've grown alongside Girl Math Capital and your own idea of what makes a good deal for you specifically?
Yeah, definitely the most important thing that I've learned is the ability to see who is actually so obsessed with their product and what they're building that almost they and their company become one.
Mm-hmm.
The more pitches I've seen, the more I can tell who is absolutely needs to solve this problem. And I honestly think that Isle of Monday was a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
They crushed their pitch with Girl Math Capital, and they very evidently, one of their statistics that they pointed to was that they had a 30,000 person wait list before they launched.
Yeah.
And that says everything about who they are, what they're building, the demand that they're seeing, and how they're capitalizing on it and making sure that there's excitement around it.
Yeah. And just to stick on Isle of Monday here for a second, obviously shout out to them, but one of the things that I loved when I was having this exact conversation, they're literally sitting where you're sitting right now. But they spoke about their background, and Janelle and Gabriella separately, they've been working in the I'll call it the broader re-commerce space. Resale for Janelle with furniture, Gabriella with vintage clothing, obviously. But they had individually years of experience building that space,
Exactly.
learning how to actually run those businesses. And what's pretty unique about that circumstance is that once they did come together, they actually pivoted away from what they originally started from, because they understood through that experience of actually building businesses, on the side, specifically at that time, what worked, what didn't work. And that really helped them not only make that pivot over to rental, which is what their business is specifically around now, but also they had the years of relationships, which in turn is actually what is the strongest part about their business today.
And that's a perfect example, honestly, of why it ties back to the founder or the founding team is they did pivot their model, and now it's even stronger than maybe the first one was. And the fact that they were able to be nimble enough to do that and also have the expertise over the space to be able to confidently make that call says a lot about them as a team.
So let's say I'm sitting across from you and I want to make a pitch, and I submit a pitch, I get in front of you. What are you specifically looking for then? What would you recommend to anyone that's listening to this or maybe watching later that wants to then come forward and have a conversation with you and Girl Math Capital?
Yes. So our pitch process is actually, we have a form on our website. So any founders who are listening would love to hear more about what you're building. And it's a pretty brief form. So we ask for your fundraise details, but then a 1 to 2 sentence description of what you're building. And as much information that you can pack into that about those 4 categories that I mentioned on the founder, product market fit, traction, and market, the more information you can pack in about those, I think the more it's going to resonate with our community. And then from there, it really comes down to the authenticity on the pitch, the drive, and the connection with the problem that they're solving.
Okay, cool. Talking about the deals that you have invested in, I think it's a pretty interesting slew of deals. I recommend everyone go check out girlmath.capital. You'll see it. It's literally, you scroll a little bit down. Wait, like the logos that are there, it's pretty impressive. But I'll let you sort of get into the actual deals that you've invested in so far. But one, how did these sort of deals come about? Talk about it from a very general view first, the relationships, etc. But then maybe go into a little bit more detail around what that process actually looks like once it comes in front of you and how you go about actually executing a deal like that afterwards.
Yeah, both great questions. In terms of sourcing the deals, I'd say that's been a lot of building relationships within the venture and angel investing ecosystem. And our deal flow has evolved a ton since we first started. I think at first I came in with most of my angel investments having been in consumer packaged goods and consumer tech, which are still 2 areas that I love and very frequently invest in. But the more that we have established Girl Math and built out our networks individually and as a collective, the more opportunities that we've gotten access to that have been later stage or in different industries. Our goal at the end of the day would be to be able to share deal flow that would accommodate any member's thesis. So we really have evolved from being early stage, a bit consumer focused to early to late stage in all different types of industries. Your second question was on
Like, how do you actually go about one, evaluating these deals that come across, and then the process of actually executing on them,
yes.
and like what you look for when you're actually evaluating what makes a good deal, what doesn't?
Yes. So with Girl Math Capital, we want to empower our members to choose what companies they resonate with. So we don't operate as a fund. We don't collect any money up front that we're deciding what it goes into. Our members are all making those decisions for themselves. So in terms of the companies that we pursue investments in, it is very community driven in terms of what they connect with. Once we get to a certain threshold of interest, we will invite the founders to come pitch. And then from there, we'll see whether we can run an SPV. And an SPV is really where we unlock value for more people to be able to get into that deal. It's one thing when one member writes a 5K check, but another thing when 50 members write 5K checks and they're all going through a single vehicle. So the founder doesn't have to track all of those different investors. It all goes through Girl Math. So SPVs have really been our unlock in terms of what deals we can get into and how we can prove our value as a collective.
And then talking about SPV, can you quickly draw the distinction between syndicate and then SPV? I've heard the term syndicate thrown out a lot. So for our listeners, what is the distinction there between those two?
Yeah, they're honestly used pretty interchangeably, but an SPV stands for special purpose vehicle, and that will be made on a deal by deal basis. So if we are deciding to invest in Ghia, for instance, we'll create an SPV for Ghia. A syndicate usually is referring to a group of investors who are investing together. So it might be for a single deal, or it might be a syndicate that invests in early stage B2B SaaS. So the syndicate is more of a collective of investors, I'd say, but they are used a bit interchangeably. I would say an SPV can also be referred to as a syndicate for a specific deal.
Gotcha. Okay. Talk a little about, you mentioned Ghia there. Talk about the deals that you've invested in so far. And has there been one, let's call it, oh shit deal of how do we get into this?
Yeah, I love that question. Definitely one of my favorite deals we've done has been Ghia. And that's actually the one that's resonated with our members most in terms of number of investors who have participated. Ghia is a non-alcoholic aperitif brand for anyone who isn't familiar. And the founder, Melanie Mazarin, is incredible. And she has built the brand so thoughtfully and into really what I think is a generation-defining consumer brand. That one was really exciting in terms of the number of members we were able to have invest in that deal. I'd say probably my biggest oh shit deal was we recently closed an SPV for SpaceX.
Wow.
And that was one where I sat back and said, wow, I feel very grateful that we could have our members invest in that and bring that opportunity to our members.
So let's stick with SpaceX here for a second. You know, there's a lot of talk in general around the web about SpaceX, you know, wanting to IPO this year, let's say within the next 18 months or so. So as someone that is now in on the SpaceX deal, how do they actually see the return on that investment that they made through Girl Math Capital? Like, what does that process look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. And Ghia and SpaceX are honestly pretty opposite in terms of what parts of the deal you want to evaluate. Ghia, it's very important that you are thinking about the company specifically. It's earlier stage. We were specifically investing in a Series A round. So there's a lot that could happen between now and exit. That said, I think it's an incredible brand, and personally, I invested. SpaceX, on the other hand, has proven to be a moonshot company, literally and figuratively. And it's less about, are they going to exit, but when and at what valuation? And does that make the fees that I have to pay to get access worth the upside I'm going to get on exit? So it's really about comparing. Early stage, it's a bit more about the company and the opportunity. Late stage, it's more about the economics that you're getting and how much you think the company will move between now and June or whenever SpaceX does IPO.
Got it. And without getting too much into the technical details of, finances, but what does that mean when you're doing your due diligence? So that deal for SpaceX comes across me. You share it with me as a member of Girl Math Capital. What are the things that for a later stage company like that is, maybe on the precipice of going IPO, what is it that I should be evaluating?
Yeah, you should be paying close attention to the structure of the deal. So what is the management fee associated with what you're getting? What is the carry? So what is the percentage of your profits that will be taken out before you receive the profits? It's really important where your allocation is coming from, especially with late stage investing. There can be a bit more misrepresentation in terms of people claiming that they have allocation to deals that they don't because it's so competitive. So it's really important to trust the source where you're getting the allocation and understand how and why that allocation was secured.
Interesting. Okay. I have to say, I mean, the reason I'm asking this question is, so Girl Math Capital, they also write a newsletter. Is it weekly, bi-weekly?
Monthly, actually.
Monthly, actually. But they actually have a section at the very end of the newsletter that goes into very detailed education on a lot of these subjects. So that's why I was like, let me get this straight from the source.
Yes, I love that.
But for anyone listening, obviously, and or watching, definitely check out girlmath.capital. Their newsletter is an amazing resource for just learning and education.
Thank you. Would love to have any subscribers
Yes,
who were listeners of the
absolutely,
pod.
absolutely. Let's talk about Girl Math Capital now as a business. So, one aspect we spoke about obviously is the deal flow, the education, but you went full time into this back in the fall. Why? Why did you think that this was something that you really wanted to fully commit into? And, you yourself are now building a startup in a ways too.
It's been a really, really fun past 7-8 months. But yeah, exactly as you said, I decided to go all in on Girl Math in August. It was a decision I had been seriously considering since April of 2025. We launched our first cohort in January, and I very quickly was seeing the impact that it was having on our members, and our numbers were growing in a very positive direction. At the same time, I knew that I would only have the impact, or Girl Math would only have the impact that I wanted it to if I put all of my time, effort, and resources into it. And it got to the point where even by April, I couldn't stop thinking about it at work. I was constantly wanting to contribute to what I was building. And at that point, it was a matter of not if I will go to do Girl Math Capital full time, it was a matter of when. And I loved my time at Uber, so feel very lucky that I was able to spend almost 4 years of my career there before starting Girl Math full time, and learned a lot of incredible lessons from that enabled me to take this jump. But I knew it was time. Once it came down to it, I knew that this was the impact that I wanted to have in my career right now.
Practically speaking, you said you've been thinking about this since April. Why August? Like, what allows you to set yourself up and, prepare yourself maybe mentally to go full in on this? Because I feel like, entrepreneurship nowadays it almost feels like the only pathway to, wealth, aside from investing, which you're obviously working on here. But for any listeners out there, broadly, just people who want to commit full time to whatever business that they're building or wanting to build, what can you tell them based on your experience of having obviously thought about it seriously back in April of 2025 and then actually going through with it in August of 2025?
Yeah, I think one of the most underrated things, honestly, is set a deadline for yourself on when you have to decide. My goal was I wanted to be doing Girl Math full time by the time cohort 2 started, because I knew that I would be able to change the experience of our members early on, and I wanted them all to have that experience from the get-go. So I said, I want cohort 2 to be able to have almost my undivided attention on scaling what we're bringing them. So I wanted to do it before that group started. At the same time, I had very specific goals in terms of what I wanted to accomplish. Once I started full time, we hadn't run any SPVs prior to August. And then in the first month, we're able to run our first 2. So I would say in terms of recommendations, set set a concrete deadline for yourself or a concrete timeline, and set specific goals on what you want to accomplish in the first 3, 6, 9, 12 months, and hold yourself accountable. I feel fortunate that I have two co-founders who are also two of my very close friends. And it's very not only fun building with them, but it's also we get to hold each other accountable and we get to build this together, but then also evaluate what's working, what's not working, where are we ahead on our goals, where are we behind on our goals. And I think as an entrepreneur, it's could be easy to get lost in oh, well, I set my deadlines, I set my goals, they're always changeable.
Yeah.
No, hold yourself accountable and your goals will expand. The further you get, bump them up. Don't let yourself ever easily reach a goal.
Talk a little bit about going to business with your friends. You spoke about holding each other accountable, and it's almost I think a privilege to start a business with your friends.
Totally.
Talk a little bit about that relationship. I'm curious, like, how has that been building alongside, two of your closest friends?
Yeah, it's been incredible, to say the least. It has given us a whole new depth of our friendship. Serena and Porter have always been two of my very close friends, but building something that three of us are so invested in has just given us a different level of getting to know each other and giving us collectively something that, again, we care so much about the outcome of. So I'm sure some people would also say it's challenging to start a business with your friends. You care about them a lot personally, so maybe it's harder to be upfront and candid with feedback and things like that. So I think that's also something important to start very early on is we started feedback sessions for each other and we made sure that, yes, we're very close friends, but we're also business partners. Yeah. So how do we set the foundation for being able to continue both of those paths together very seamlessly?
Well, based on what you're saying, I think you all three have a very bright future with
Thank
Girl
you.
Math Capital. Let's talk a little bit about the growth of Girl Math Capital and really what your vision is for this calendar year. Before I had spoken with you, my assumption was Girl Math Capital is really isolated to New York City. It was something that you were building specifically here, but obviously I come to know that this is actually a global platform, and across the US, you have tons of different communities. So first, speak a little bit about the growth of that community and really how you're able to go global, let's say.
Yeah. So right now we have 400 members. They are in 29 cities and 11 countries. And both of those numbers seem to keep growing every time we start a new cohort, which is really special to see small pockets of girl math pop up in places where I didn't even know our reach could get there. Our goal for our geography would be to have a large enough presence in each of our core cities, at least, to host events and get the group together. We recently started an initiative called City Leads, where we have women who are leading our presence in San Francisco, Philadelphia, Austin, Chicago, and they are kind of in charge of getting the women in girl math around them physically together. Because I think that's such an important part that we've seen in New York City. And New York is next level on the ability to get people together even in small places. But our goal would be to give the New York City effect to every city where we have a presence.
No, that's incredible. I remember having this conversation with Julia O'Mara, who's one of the co-founders of Pickle, the peer-to-peer fashion rental platform. And, when we spoke, funny enough, back in August of 2025, she had spoken about the growth of Pickle really expanding outside of New York. And one of the things that really helped them as they were establishing in new cities was like growing their equivalent of these city leads or these ambassadors, like these growth leads that can really help bring the magic of, Pickle in that case, Girl Math Capital in this case, to those respective cities. Do you see that there is difference in culture maybe in the different cities where you have pockets of Girl Math Capital, as it pertains to the type of speakers that they bring in, or like what types of deals people in those communities are interested in?
Yeah. First of all, shout out Julia. She was actually, we interviewed her for a girl math event too this past summer. And I feel like, to your point, we have kind of looked at her as a great model of how you can activate one service or platform in multiple cities and adapt it to that city. So that's definitely something that we're cognizant of as we start hosting in San Francisco and LA and these different places is how can we maintain the girl math identity, but also adapt it to the people that are there, the types of things that they're excited about and passionate about. We might have a Pilates class on the beach in LA, and we could only dream of doing that in New York. So we'll definitely keep our eyes on how we can make sure that our presence is formed to the way the city and the people in it naturally exist as well.
Are there any fun deals that you've just come across because of the communities that you have now popping up all over the country?
Yes, that's been another great factor of our deal flow in the past 6 months is the amount of member sourced opportunities. We have women who meet founders in their network or even just come across a brand and reach out cold and end up sharing the deal with us. And it ends up closing an investment from 10 or 20 of our members. So it's been really awesome to see what sorts of companies and connections have come out of expanding our presence into all sorts of different places.
As you're looking towards the rest of the year, like what is your one goal for Girl Math Capital in 2026?
Ooh, that's a great question. It's hard to pinpoint one. Our biggest near-term goal would be to run a successful fourth cohort. And by successful, we mean continuing to build and expand on our educational offering, continue to bring great deals to the table, and have this new group that's onboarded in August that all of a sudden has access to everything that we are creating. Our longer term goal is to continue running SPVs and build our portfolio. One day we would love to raise a fund. So
Speaking it into existence.
yes, speaking it into existence. Yeah, everything that we are building the next couple of years, we're hoping will ultimately accumulate into a fund side of the business while still maintaining our community side of the business where they're investing in self-directed investing in everything that they want to be. And then we also have the fund option where we can have members invest through the fund, but then also invest external LP capital too.
Wow. Do you have any dream partnerships that you're hoping to unlock in the next year, next 2 years?
We are really hoping to host an event with Mrs. Dow Jones.
She's iconic.
Yes, she is a great inspiration. And just
Have you ever spoken with her?
Fun. Yes.
Okay.
I fortunately met her at a morning brew event about a month ago that we both were speaking at. And coincidentally, we were seated next to each other at lunch. So it was the perfect opportunity to get that ball rolling. And she would be such an incredible woman to bring in front of our community.
Amazing. What do you think about this growth in the creator economy space? And what do you think that means for one, both angel investing, but also the types of companies now you'll start seeing that maybe differs from what's traditionally been out there and available in the angel investing community?
Mm-hmm. Especially on the consumer side, we've already started seeing a lot more creator-led brands. I think it first kind of started with Alex Earl negotiating equity in Poppy for a brand deal. And since then, of course, she's done sip marks and she just launched her skincare brand. And I think that she's really paving the way for a lot of creators to start their own brands and businesses. But on top of that, I think that we will start seeing more creators become investors too. And I think that that's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. And that especially for a consumer brand, if a creator is investing in it and then also sharing it, that in itself is a natural way that that company is going to explode in terms of number of views and number of customers. So I think on both the founder side and the investor side, creator-led and creator-invested businesses, I think, are going to start booming. And hopefully Girl Math can be a part of enabling those creators to invest, but also helping the ones that start their own company get the capital to do so.
Well, so what is your pitch? Let's do it here. What is your pitch to any creators that, are really now coming into wanting to invest? Like, what is unique about the girl math community and what you can offer to them?
Yeah. On the investor side, it's definitely the foundation of the women that we have in the room. You will find people that you connect with on all different levels, all really solidified by the fact that they are interested and excited about getting into alts and getting into especially angel investing. On the founder side too, I would say almost the exact same thing is what we say to founders on why they should work with our community is we have 400 women who are across finance, consulting, startups, MBAs, all sorts of different areas who bring their own networks and experience. So no matter what a founder is looking for, no matter what their ask is, we believe that they can go through our community for that and that we will have someone who will be able to help them with that. So I think that applies to both the founder and investor side, and just the power of the expertise and the network of the fact that we have 400 ambitious, well-connected, curious women that are ready to help both of these types of people.
That's incredible. And then what is a dream deal that you would love to come across your table?
Ooh, a dream deal.
Whatever stage.
A lot of our members really want to invest in Anthropic.
Okay.
Which is funny because we did just invest in OpenAI.
Okay.
So it would honestly be good in that it would give our members both exposure to the more enterprise option, the more consumer option.
Yeah.
But that is definitely one that we have seen a lot of interest in, and we're hoping to find our way in somehow.
Fingers crossed. And last question here. What is it that you want to see from yourself over the next year in terms of growth, whether it is how you're leading Girl Math Capital, whether it is your profile as an investor, or just as someone who's sitting in this space that's wanting to learn more?
Yeah.
What sort of growth do you want to see out of yourself?
That's a really good question. I think I want to push myself to learn as much as possible about all the types of deals that we're doing so that I can become a better advocate for our members. And then also on the founder side, I can help guide them through this might be the right option or this might be the path that you want to go. There is so much I've been learning in the past 8 months doing Girl Math full time that I know this is really just the start of all of the information that's out there. So I think where I want to grow the most is really just pushing myself to absorb as much as possible so that at the end of the day, I can be a source of knowledge for our members as well.
Amazing. And any last words for the TechCouture community, for anyone listening out there who's interested in Girl Math Capital?
I think just thank you for having me and thank you for listening. We would love to have any future investors that are listening come join our next cohort or join the community.
Starts in August.
And any founders who are listening would love if you wanted to share what you're building with the Girl Math community. We would love to be helpful and hopefully connect you with some investors down the line.
Amazing. And where can they reach you? What's the website, the socials, all of it?
Yes, our website is girlmath.capital. And then both our Instagram and TikTok are Girl Math Capital, as well as our LinkedIn. And then please subscribe to our newsletter. And we love hearing people's feedback too. So loved your email response on our newsletter and hope for many more of those from anyone listening.
Absolutely. Thank you again, everyone, for listening. Thank you, Emma, for coming on. I'm so excited for everyone to listen to this episode and to explore Girl Math Capital.
Thank you so much for having me.